Captain Rebecca Stone had commanded starships for 15 years, but she'd never felt her blood turn to ice quite like this. The alien vessel approaching the research station Defiant wasn't just another first contact. Scenariowet was a predator sizing up its prey, and right now, humanity was definitely the prey. The crystalline ship moved through space with an elegance that defied physics, its hull pulsing with an eerie blue light that seemed to reach right through the viewscreen and caress her skin with cold fingers. Rebecca gripped the armrests of her command chair so hard her knuckles went white. 23 years of military training, and she still felt like a child afraid of the dark. "They're scanning us again, Captain," Lieutenant Jake Morrison reported from his console, his voice carrying that particular edge of fear that experienced officers try to hide but never quite manage. His hands danced across the controls with practiced efficiency, but Rebecca could see the slight tremor in his fingers. But this time, something's different. Different was putting it mildly. The first scan 20 minutes ago had been thorough but clinical-like, being examined by a doctor's instruments. But with a certain professional courtesy. That suggested civilized beings conducting legitimate research. This second probe felt entirely different. It felt hungry, predatory, like being studied by something that was deciding which part of you to eat first. Rebecca's jaw tightened as she felt the invisible tendrils of the alien, scan washing over her ship, her crew, her very soul. Every instinct screamed danger, but protocol demanded patience. First contact situations required careful handling, diplomatic restraint, and above all, the benefit of the doubt. Even when that doubt was eating you alive from the inside. "Any luck with communications?" she asked, though she already knew the answer from Lisa's frustrated expression. Communications officer Lisa Parker looked up from her console, her usually steady hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the controls. "Nothing, Captain. They're ignoring every frequency we've tried. Radio, subspace, even the old quantum entanglement protocols. It's like we don't exist to them. Or maybe, Rebecca thought grimly, we exist too much. Maybe that's the problem," the alien ship continued, its approach with the inevitable patience of a glacier, close enough that Rebecca could make out intricate details on its surface. Strange symbols were carved into the crystalline hull, beautiful, flowing script that seemed to shift and change when you weren't looking directly at it. The artistry was breathtaking, but somehow wrong. It's like a spider's web glistening with dewdrops. In the morning, sun gorgeous, until you realized what it was really for. "Distance to target?" Rebecca asked, though she wasn't sure if she wanted to know the answer. 12,000 kilometers in closing, Jake replied. "At their current speed, they'll be within weapons range in 6 minutes. Weapons range. I hate the phrase. Hung in the air like a death sentence. Rebecca had to remind herself that they didn't know these beings had weapons. They didn't know anything about them, except that they were clearly more advanced than humanity. They weren't interested in talking, and they seemed very interested in examining humans, the way a biologist might examine bacteria under a microscope. "Maintain. Yellow alert," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine like a living thing. "And keep trying to reach them. Try mathematical sequences, prime numbers, anything that might get their attention." But even as she gave the order, Rebecca knew it was futile. You don't ignore 17 different attempts at communication unless you're either completely alien to the concept of dialogue or you've already decided that dialogue isn't necessary. And given the increasing intensity of their scans, Rebecca was beginning to suspect it was the latter. The bridge fell into that particular kind of tense silence that comes before a storm. The steady hum of the ship's systems provided a counterpoint to the barely audible breathing of her crew. 23 men and women who'd signed up to explore the galaxy, not to become specimens in some alien laboratory. "Captain," Lisa said. Suddenly, her voice tight with barely controlled panic, "I'm reading massive energy buildups in their scanning array. Whatever they're about to do, it's going to be big." Rebecca felt her stomach drop. First scan had been uncomfortable, but manageable. If this second probe was going to be orders of magnitude more powerful, all hands, prepare for the words died in her throat as the alien ship suddenly pulsed with brilliant light. And Rebecca realized with crystal clarity that everything was about to change. But The age of human innocence in the galaxy was about to end, and it was going to end badly. Time seemed to slow as the second scan began. As Rebecca Stone, veteran of a dozen conflicts and survivor of humanity's bloodiest wars, felt truly afraid for the first time in her adult life. Because sometimes, when you stare into the abyss long enough, you realize it's been staring back at you all along, and it's hungry. The second scan didn't just hit the defiant, it violated every law of physics, decency, and sanity that Rebecca Stone thought she understood about the universe. One moment she was gripping her command chair, watching the alien vessel pulse with that ominous blue light. The next moment she was screaming as something ice-cold and utterly alien tore through, her mind like a chainsaw through silk. This wasn't the polite knock on the door that the first scan had been. This was a home invasion by something that didn't recognize the concept of privacy, consent, or basic human dignity. Rebecca felt her consciousness being peeled apart layer by layer, and the worst part is the alien presence seemed to be enjoying it, Captain. Jake's voice cracked with pure terror, his usual military composure shattered like glass. They're inside our minds. Inside was putting it mildly. The alien probe wasn't just reading their thoughts, it was ransacking them. Rebecca felt the cold, clinical presence rifling through her memories like a burglar going through her jewelry box. Her first kiss with Tommy Martinez behind the school gymnasium. Her father's funeral when she was 12, standing in the rain. While they lowered the casket, her academy graduation, the pride in her mother's eyes as she received her commission. Nothing was sacred to these creatures. Nothing was off limits. They picked through her most intimate moments with the casual indifference of a librarian sorting through old books. But somehow, that clinical detachment made it worse. At least a human violator would have the decency to be excited about it, and the memories were just the beginning. The probe dove deeper, examining their bodies with the same invasive thoroughness. Rebecca could feel it mapping her neural pathways, cataloging her DNA, studying the electrical patterns of her brain like she was a specimen in a laboratory. Every cell, every synapse, every heartbeat was being recorded, analyzed, and filed away for future reference. Get out of my head. Engineer Mike Rodriguez screamed from across the bridge, blood streaming from his nose in twin crimson rivers. His hands clawed at his temples as if he could physically tear the alien presence out of his skull. Around the bridge, her crew writhed in agony as the invisible intruder violated their most private thoughts. Lisa Parker was curled up in her chair, tears streaming down her face as she relived what looked like childhood trauma. David Carter was on his knees, his hands pressed against his ears, his mouth open in a silent scream. Rebecca tried to fight back, tried to build mental walls against the invasion, but it was like trying to stop a tsunami with a paper towel. The alien presence was simply too advanced, too powerful, too utterly foreign to human experience. It moved through their minds like they were open books, reading every page with the same dispassionate interest. But as the violation continued, something else began to build in Rebecca's chest. Not fear, she was beyond fear now. Not despair, despair was a luxury she couldn't afford. No, what was building in her was something far more dangerous, pure, undiluted rage. How dare they? How dare these crystalline bastards treat humanity like lab rats? How dare they assume that superior technology gave them the right to violate everything that made humans human? The anger spread through her like nuclear fire, burning away the fear and replacing it with something infinitely more useful. The probe was studying their emotions too, she realized. It was cataloging their fear, their pain, their helplessness. Let it catalog this, the fury of a species that had clawed its way from the primordial soup to the stars, and wasn't about to let some glass-holed aliens push them around. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the probe withdrew. The alien presence vanished from their minds, leaving behind only the echo of violation and the taste of copper in their mouths. Rebecca gasped, her vision swimming as blood trickled from her nose.
Ow.
Around the bridge, her crew slowly picked themselves up off the floor, their faces pale and shell-shocked. But Rebecca wasn't thinking about their trauma. She wasn't thinking about protocol or diplomacy or first contact procedures. She was thinking about one simple fact. These aliens had just made the biggest mistake in the history of the galaxy. They'd assumed that because they could violate humanity, humanity would simply accept it. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Rebecca wiped the blood from her mouth with the back of her hand, her eyes blazing with a fury that could have melted steel. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 7 billion souls who'd never learned to surrender. Battle stations. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Then, as the full implications of what had just happened sank in, Rebecca's voice rose to a roar that shook the bridge itself. All hands to battle stations. The human ship had just learned what it meant to be prey. The crew had experienced violation on a scale that would have broken lesser species. They'd been examined, catalogued, and dismissed as insignificant by beings who thought superior. Technology meant they could do whatever they wanted. Now it was time to teach these aliens the most important lesson in human history. We don't pray for long. As the red alert klaxons began to wail and her crew rushed to their combat stations, Rebecca Stone felt something she'd never experienced before. Not fear that was behind her now. Not even anger, though that was still burning bright. What she felt was anticipation. Because humanity was about to show the galaxy what happened when you mistake kindness for weakness. The aliens wanted to know what humans were made of. They were about to find out. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Not the comfortable quiet of a well-oiled crew going about their duties, but the stunned silence of people who'd just witnessed something that fundamentally changed their understanding of the universe. Rebecca Stone stood in the center of it all, blood still trickling from her nose. Her uniform torn, but her spine straight as a steel rod. "Damage report," she commanded, her voice carrying that deadly calm that her crew had learned to fear more than her anger. It was the voice she used when someone was about to die. Everyone knew it wouldn't be her. Chief Engineer Tom Bradley's hand shook as he worked his console, his face pale as moonlight. "Hull integrity holding at 97%, he reported, his voice barely above a whisper. Then, as if the words were being torn from his throat, "But Captain, they stole everything. Our databases, our research, our personal files, they copied it all." Rebecca felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, she was beyond fear now. This was something else entirely. Something that had been building in humanity's genetic code for millions of years, waiting for exactly this moment. "Everything?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Navigation charts, crew records, classified military protocols, research data from the last 15 years. Tom's voice cracked. "They know where Earth is now. They know how many ships. We have what our weapons can do, where our colonies are located. They know everything." Rebecca stood slowly, her hands clenching into fists that could have crushed steel. The first scan had been reconnaissance, invasive, but understandable. This second probe was something else entirely. It was rape. A complete violation of everything that made them human, committed by beings who clearly didn't consider humanity worthy of basic respect. "They scanned our minds too," added Medical Officer Dr. Amanda Wells, her voice shaking with violated fury. Amanda was usually the calm one, the voice of reason in crisis situations. Seeing her this shaken sent a chill through the entire bridge crew. Whatever they wanted, they took it right out of our heads. Our memories, our knowledge, our deepest fears and strongest loves, all of it. Rebecca turned to stare at the alien ship through the main view screen. It floated there peacefully, its crystalline hull pulsing with that same serene blue light, as if it hadn't just committed an act of war against a species it had never bothered to acknowledge as equals. The casual indifference was almost worse than outright hostility. You know what the really infuriating part was? They were probably filing humanity under primitive species in whatever database they kept. Just another entry in their catalog of lesser beings, notable only for the interesting neural patterns they'd discovered during their unauthorized dissection. "Ma'am, Jake," Morrison said quietly, "they're not even trying to communicate with us. It's like we're not worth talking to." And that was the heart of it, wasn't it? These beings had assumed that superior technology gave them the right to do whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted. It treated humanity like bacteria on a slide, interesting to study, but not worthy of consideration as actual people. Rebecca had seen this attitude before. In her father's stories about the old wars, in history books about colonial expansion, in every conflict where one group decided another group wasn't really human, she'd sworn she'd never let it happen to her people. Time to keep that promise open. "A channel," she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's wounded pride and burning anger. "All frequencies." "Channel open, Captain," Lisa Parker replied, her hands steady now despite the tears still streaking her face. Rebecca stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of 7 billion souls who'd never learned. "To kneel. Alien vessel, you have violated our ship, our minds, and our very souls. You crossed a line that should never be crossed between civilized beings." She paused, letting the words sink in. In the depths of space, she could almost feel the alien ship's sensors focused on her, analyzing her words, her tone, her species, capacity for resistance. "This is your only warning," she continued, her voice growing harder with each word. "Leave now, or learn why humans are the apex predators of the galaxy." The response was immediate and unmistakable. The crystalline ship's hull began to glow brighter, and energy signatures spiked across their sensors. Weapon systems, they were powering up weapon systems. Jake's voice was tight with disbelief. "Captain, they're charging what looks like plasma. Cannons. Multiple arrays." Rebecca's smile was all teeth and no warmth. It was the smile of a predator that had just realized it wasn't prey after all. Wrong answer. The aliens had made a fundamental miscalculation. They'd assumed that because they could violate humanity, humanity would simply accept it. They'd confused technological superiority with moral authority. And now they were about to learn the difference. Because here's the thing about humans, that these crystalline bastards hadn't figured out yet. We don't just get mad, we get even, and we're really, really good at it. "All hands prepare for combat," Rebecca announced over the ship's comm system. "We're about to teach our visitors some manners." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as her crew rushed to their battle stations. But Rebecca remained perfectly still, staring at the alien ship with the patience of a hunter who'd just spotted her prey. They wanted to know what humans were made of. They were about to find out. Rebecca Stone's laugh echoed through the bridge, like broken glass scraping against steel. It wasn't the sound of someone losing their mind. It was the sound of someone who'd just realized. They held all the cards and their opponent didn't even know they were playing poker. "They think we're defenseless prey," she said, her voice carrying that particular brand of dark amusement that made seasoned warriors take a step back. The alien ship hung there in space, weapons charging. It's probably congratulating itself on finding another primitive species to add to its collection. They were about to learn their first lesson about humanity. "We don't stay prey for long." Rebecca turned to her tactical officer, and David Carter saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold and hot at the same time. It was the look of a predator that had just remembered what it was born to do. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice smooth as velvet over razor wire, "show them what happens when you corner a species that fought its way to the stars." Now, here's something these crystalline bastards hadn't bothered to research in all their extensive scanning. Human history. If they had, they might have learned that humanity didn't reach the stars through peaceful exploration and diplomatic handshakes. We clawed our way up from the primordial soup, survived ice ages that should have killed us, fought world wars that turned entire continents into graveyards, and then strapped ourselves to controlled explosions to escape our own gravity well. Defiant wasn't just a research vessel, it was a human ship, built by a species that had survived everything the universe could throw at them. Through sheer bloody-minded determination and an absolute refusal to quit, every bolt, every circuit, every line of code carried the genetic memory of a species that had never learned to surrender. "Plasma cannons online," David Carter reported, his earlier fear replaced by the cold professionalism that had kept humanity alive for millennia. His hands moved across the weapons console with practiced precision, movement carrying the weight of countless generations who'd stood their ground against impossible odds. Fusion torpedoes armed, point defense grid active. The transformation was remarkable. Minutes ago, Carter had been terrified, violated, broken by the alien probe. Now, he was something else entirely, human warrior doing what human warriors had always done best, turning fear into fury and fury into focused violence. "They're charging their main weapon," Jake warned from his station, his voice tight with urgency. The tactical display showed energy readings that would have made a lesser species evacuate their bowels. "Whatever they're planning to hit us with, it's big." Rebecca's eyes glowed with predatory anticipation. This was at the moment when the universe would learn what happened when you threatened a human's family, because that's what her crew was, wasn't it? Family and humans had a very simple rule about family. You hurt ours, we hurt you back. Permanently. "Let them fire first," she said, her voice carrying the patience of a hunter who'd already chosen her prey. "Then we'll show them why you never threaten a human's family." The seconds stretched like hours. On the main screen, the alien ships. Crystalline hull pulsed with building energy, beautiful and terrible as a star about to go supernova. Rebecca could feel her crew's tension, their readiness, her absolute faith in her ability to get them through this. Then the alien ship fired. The beam that erupted from their vessel was coherent. Energy in its purest form, a lance of concentrated destruction that could have boiled oceans, cracked continents, turned entire cities into radioactive glass. It was the kind of weapon that should have ended this fight before it began. It struck the Defiant's adaptive armor and scattered like light through a prism. You see, there's something else these aliens hadn't bothered to learn about humanity. We've been trying to kill each other for so long that we've gotten really, really good at not dying. The Defiant's defensive systems weren't just advanced, they were paranoid. Built by a species that had learned the hard way that the universe was full of things that wanted to kill you.
Oh.
Rebecca said, her voice soft as silk and hard as iron. "Make them regret being born." The human ship's response was immediate and devastating. Plasma bolts traveling at near-light speed erupted from the Defiant's cannon arrays, each one carrying the concentrated fury of a species that had just been pushed too far. They punched through the alien vessel's shields like bullets through paper, tearing into the crystalline hull with the efficiency of a surgeon's scalpel. But Rebecca wasn't done, not even close. "Fire fusion torpedoes," she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of every human who'd ever refused to kneel. The torpedoes followed the plasma bolts, miniature suns blooming against the alien ship's hull in flowers of nuclear fire. Each explosion was a star being born and dying in the space of seconds, releasing energies that would have been visible from light years away. The alien ship writhed under the assault, its beautiful hull cracking and shattering like crystal under a hammer. But then something happened that no one expected. The ship screamed. It's not through radio or subspace communication, but through the quantum foam itself. A cry of pain and terror that bypassed technology entirely and struck directly at the primitive brain stem. The alien ship actually screamed as it died. Rebecca felt no satisfaction in the sound. This wasn't about cruelty or revenge. This was about drawing a line in the darkness and making sure everyone understood what happened when you crossed it. The message was simple. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy. We weren't asking for permission. The alien vessel spun helplessly through space like a broken toy, its once majestic crystalline hull now a shattered monument to overconfidence. The beautiful luminescence that had pulsed so arrogantly just minutes before was flickering and dying like a candle in the wind. Internal explosions lit up its translucent structure in a deadly fireworks display, each burst of light marking another system failure. Another piece of alien technology reduced to cosmic debris. Rebecca Stone watched the destruction without mercy, her face carved from stone and starlight. There was no room for pity when dealing with predators, a lesson humanity had learned the hard way over millennia of evolution. The strong survived by making sure the weak understood their place. Today, these crystalline bastards had learned which category they belonged to. "They're trying to retreat," David Carter reported from his tactical station, his voice carrying a mix of satisfaction and professional respect for a beaten enemy. The weapons officer's hands remained steady on his controls, ready to deliver. Another devastating salvo if the aliens decided to make this fight last longer than necessary? Rebecca nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the wounded alien ship. Let them limp home, she said, her voice carrying the cold authority of someone who'd just rewritten the rules of galactic engagement. But first, transmit this on every frequency they've used. She stepped forward, moving with the deliberate grace of a predator who'd just established dominance over her territory. When she spoke, her voice carried across the void to any who might be listening, a message written in fire and fury, carved into the quantum foam itself with the authority of nuclear weapons and human will. To whoever receives this transmission, she began, her words echoing through subspace and beyond, you encountered the human ship Defiant today. You chose to violate our minds, steal our memories, and threaten our lives. The alien ship was fleeing now, its weapons dark, its scanning arrays silent, its arrogance shattered like glass against the immovable force of human determination. But Rebecca wasn't done with them yet, not by a long shot. We responded as humans. Always do when pushed beyond our breaking point, she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. We pushed back harder. This wasn't just a message to the retreating aliens. This was a declaration of war, a statement of intent. A line drawn in the cosmic sand that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. Every species with the technology to intercept subspace communications would hear this message. Every government, every military, every alien civilization that thought they could treat humanity as a curiosity would understand exactly what they were dealing with. You wanted to know what we are, Rebecca said, her voice now carrying the weight of 7 billion souls who'd never learned to kneel. Now you know. We are the species that stared into the abyss and made it blink first. And wasn't that the truth? Humanity had looked into the darkness between the stars and decided it wasn't dark enough. We'd faced extinction events, ice ages, plagues, wars, and the vacuum of space itself, and we'd responded to each challenge the same way, by refusing to die. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every day, Rebecca continued, her voice growing harder with each word, and we thrived anyway. The alien ship was barely visible now, a flickering dot of light disappearing into the cosmic background. But Rebecca knew they could still hear her. More importantly, she knew others were listening. The message would spread like wildfire through whatever communication networks these species used. It would be analyzed, debated, and most importantly, believed. We are humans, she said, her voice carrying the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. And we do not forgive, do not forget, and we sure as hell don't yield. She gestured to Jake Morrison, who'd been watching the proceedings. With the wide-eyed amazement of someone witnessing history being made, close channel. The transmission ended, but Rebecca knew the real work was just beginning, as the broken alien ship disappeared into the darkness. She settled back into her command chair with the satisfaction of someone who'd just taught the galaxy its first lesson about humanity. The message would spread like wildfire through whatever network these creatures used. Other species would hear it and understand that humanity had drawn a line in the stars, and they would defend it with nuclear fire and cold steel. The age of human innocence was over. The age of human dominance had begun. Resume course, she ordered, her voice returning to its normal professional tone. Round the bridge, her crew began the routine procedures of post-combat operations. Their movements efficient and practiced, they'd all just participated in humanity's graduation from prey to predator, and they knew it. And Mr. Morrison, Rebecca added, her voice carrying a hint of dark amusement, log this encounter. I have a feeling the galaxy just learned something important about us. Jake's fingers flew across his console, recording the details of humanity's first real introduction to galactic society. The report would make interesting reading back at Fleet Command. More importantly, it would serve as a template for future encounters with species who thought superior technology meant they could do whatever they wanted in the depths of space. The human ship Defiant continued on its journey, fangs bared, and ready for whatever came next. The universe had just learned that there was a new apex predator in the galaxy, and its name was humanity. The message was simple and clear. We're here, we're armed, and we don't play nice with bullies. Welcome to the human age,